I've printed out a picture of Luca to roughly the size of my cake card. And I'm just going to colour my buttercream with a little bit of green. And we're just going to put a little bit of that in between the two layers. Now, I don't have to do a lot of shaping to this cake, but I'm still going to put my template on there for a little bit of guidance. And there's a couple of little bits where my cake doesn't quite stick out quite as far as the template. So what I'll do is I'll maybe stick some extra cake on that bit later and keep hold of your offcuts. And I'm going to cut out the eyes and the mouth so that I know whereabouts these need to be cut into the cake. And I've put a little slit just above the top of his nose as well. So just mark with your knife. So I'm cutting reasonably deep, but you don't have to cut it all out. So we're going to remove what we can of the mouth and roughly the eye area. So I'm just kind of sloping it inwards for the eyes, taking a little bit off the forehead so the forehead slopes backwards. And I'm going to use a little bit of the offcut that I took out of the eye to put back on that nose area, but don't bring the nose out too much. It only wants a little bit. And then a tiny bit on the top of each cheek as well. Once you've done that, we're going to cover the whole thing in the buttercream. The trickiest bit was getting it in the mouth. And then I want to try and smooth it off a little bit. So I've just got a flexible scraper and I'm trying to bend it a little bit as I scrape it over the buttercream that I've put on there. So stick that in the fridge just for 5-10 minutes, just so it starts to firm up a little bit. And I'm going to use some green paste, fondant, I should say, sugar paste, to cover the face itself. So it's much paler in colour than the face of Luca, but what I'm going to do is add more colour to it afterwards in edible powders. Make sure you've rolled your fondant large enough that it covers the whole face and press it down gently, especially into the mouth and eye areas, especially with the eyes. I'm going to mark around them a little bit and then just press in where I want those eyes to go. So those eye sockets are in there. I'm going to take off any extra from around the bottom. So I'm just going to use a balling tool to put in the nostrils, and I'm trying to colour him a little bit bluer at the top and then deeper green near the bottom. And I'm using the edible powders. I just want a tiny bit of pink fondant in the bottom of his mouth for the tongue. I'm going to put some black powder in for the back of the mouth. Now, if you want, you can just use black fondant to cover a thin layer in the back of the mouth. But because I had powders here ready, I thought it was just as quick and easy for me to just dust in. So I've got some pale yellow. I think this is the pastel yellow colour I've got in the pre-coloured fondant. And I'm just going to use this for the eyes. So I've removed the eyebrows from my template so I can mark roughly the size and shape of them on my cake again. So I'm just going to go with the black edible dust and a small brush just over those eyebrow areas. And also a little bit just around the outside edge of the eye. I'm going to go over with a little bit of green just on the eyes. Usually I would go for a brown and then just darken it, but I thought on this one I'm going to just keep it white and then we're going to just paint the colour on. So I've got a Sugar Flare chestnut brown that I'm going to use on this one. And I'm going to try and have it so it's a little bit shaded, so darker around the very outer edge, and then it's going to be paler towards the middle. And then I'm just going to use black. So that black powder we were using earlier, but I've mixed it with dipping solution. So now for the teeth, what I'm going to do is squish some little balls of white fondant onto my template so I can see that they're about the same size as each of his teeth. And then I'll cut off anything that goes over the top of the mouth. And then I'm going to move them off the template into Luca's mouth on my cake. You might need a little bit of water or edible glue just to stick them in place. And I'm just going to add a bit of shading with some of the powders, just so they're not really bright white. Let's put a little dot of white in each eye. This is just fondant. So I'm going to give him some little freckles. I think the freckles that he has maybe. They're difficult to tell on my template. Now let's just add a bit of colour to our background so it's not too plain. The image I'm looking at looks like he's looking up to the surface of the sea. So I'm just painting some white and blue at the top. Then I'm going to use the dry powders for under the sea part, so it looks kind of a bit misty. And I want to add blue and greens to this, and I'm going to try and concentrate more colour near the bottom so it's darker near the bottom of my board, so it looks like it's deeper in the sea. You can even add some black as well if you want. So just keep going with the dust until you're happy. I'm going to add a bit of white dust up near the top, just so it looks like the light kind of coming down through the top of the water a little bit. I don't have much space for a body, so I'm just using that little bit of that green fondant we've got left over, and you'll just about see a bit of his neck and body here. He does have some scales, more on his arms, so I think I'm struggling to get those on here because I don't have quite enough body on show. But then you just want to put some powders on, greens and blues, so that matches with the face. So I've pushed my rolling pin in to make a couple of indentations, and then let's cut 2 curves to get the shape. And we're going to need to dust this up so again it matches the colour of his face. I'll do the other one first. So the other one is a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to cut a little bit off each circle. Now I'm going to need more circles than this, I think, but I'm just going to make a few at a time. I'm going to put some white lines on with my white pen. So this is an edible pen, guys, but you can just use white powder mixed into a a paint or a white food colouring for this. So I'm just going to put a bit of purple just on the very edges, and then let's dust up those ears, or gills. They'd be gills, would they, rather than ears? So let's start by sticking these on. So I'm going to go all the way around. I'm just sticking a bit of water on the edge of them, and you can either press them against the board or you can press them against the side of the cake. And what I'm going to do is put a piece of fondant where I want his ear / gill, just so it's not completely flat against the board. So the same on this one. And then we'll keep going with the scales or hair. And the ones on the top kind of look like they're flopping backwards a little bit as he's going up in the water. So I don't want them to stick up too much. I want to kind of have them folded back. And then I'm adding a little bit of white powder along the top, so it looks like the sunlight from above the water is just coming down and catching on the top of him there. Very messy, this one, with all the dust, but there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video.